Welcome in to Trucker Talk Radio. You're on Behind the Wheelhouse with J and J. I'm John. This is Justin. So here's the thing that's been eating at me lately. We spent a whole segment last week on truck verification, van verification, equipment vetting, and all of it. Everybody's selling you a tool to check the truck, check the authority, check the DOT number. Nobody, and I mean nobody, except for our sponsors at ReadyApp, is asking the question, who's behind the wheel? Who's behind the wheel? You can run a clean carrier, clean authority, clean safer record, insurance, make sure it's current, and then a driver you never identified, never verified, never confirmed is who they said they are, climbs into the cab. The truck checked out, the man driving it didn't. That gap, that's what the whole ball game, and that's the gap that our sponsor ReadyApp was built to close. They verify the driver, the actual human. That's the part everybody skips. And after today's conversation, you're going to understand exactly why skipping it is the most expensive shortcut in this industry. So let's get into it. Our guest today is a guy who's been called the DOT guy. And once you hear about his background, you'll understand why that name fits. Rob Carpenter has spent over 2 decades behind the wheel of a truck, hazmat, household goods, port drayage, you name it, he ran it. He didn't just drive it through, he owned trucking companies. He ran a brokerage, he did international forwarding, and then he moved into a fleet safety and compliance at the highest level, building safety programs for fleets, running over 1,000 power units. Today, he wears a few hats. He's a compliance executive, a partner at TruckSafe Consulting, the DOT safety consulting and training firm founded by Brandon Wiseman and Jared Childers. He's also an independent writer for FreightWaves. He writes for the Playbook. He's worked with Motive, and he does risk control consulting for insurance and captives. And here's the one thing I really want to get into today. Rob just wrote a book. It's called The Hitchhiker's Guide to Trucking. And when I'm telling you, it is massive. I don't know if you can see it on my camera here. If
Keep
it
it in the
gets through there, there it is. It's extremely thick. And he pulls from 45 years of lived experience and 12 years of original investigation into lay the entire system bare. It's been featured on 60 Minutes, Will Kane, CBS Sunday Morning, NBC, and over 150 podcasts and radio shows. And he's on here today with us. Rob, man, that was a mouthful. Welcome to Behind the Wheelhouse, brother. Glad to have you on.
Yeah, good
to be here. Thanks for
having me. Did I get it all right there? Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think so. It's hard to get it right, so you do good.
You've got this rare thing where you started as a driver and you worked your way up to being one of the most respected compliance voices in the country. So take us back. How does a guy from hauling hazmat and household goods to being a guy the experts call when they've got a question? Where did this all start for you in the trucking world?
So the trucking world kind of started, it really was more personal than anything. I was raised by my grandparents. So my great grandfather had a farm. My mother left, my dad pretty much left, and then I kind of got shipped over to the grandparents, and they had a farm. My grandmother lived there, my aunt lived there, my great grandfather lived there, but it was a huge farm, right? Like we had livestock, we had a ranch and we had a farm. I don't know that many people know the difference, but we raised cattle, we raised hogs, and then we grew crop. So then that's what I mean by ranch and farm. So we also had trucks, obviously, for that reason. So we raised cattle and hogs over here. We bring them over, we butcher them. We had a meat house and everything. So I kind of got into the trucks back in these were like 50s and 60s models, max. And so people who've read my stuff for a long time will hear me talk about going from 2 sticks to 1 stick to push button transmissions and how that's changed so much in the industry. But that's really where it got started, was just a fascination with diesel equipment, farm equipment, trucks, and then it just went from farming and ranching to trucks. So that's kind of how we got there. And then I think my interest with compliance really started because I've been non-compliant longer than I've been compliant. So in my earlier days, it was all loose leaf logs and
Yeah.
ELDs didn't, it wasn't even it was unheard of. I remember this was probably 2011, 2012, and Ty Sawyer, who's a lot older driver than me, was telling me at a truck stop, he's like, you gotta look at this keep trucking free logbook thing that just came out. Because we're gonna have to learn this crap. They're gonna eventually put these in the trucks. And then, 8 years later, there we were.
Hey drivers, our partners over at Zero Breeze have designed a no idle air conditioner for sleeper cabs and fleets that can pay for itself in just one summer. If you're spending up to $40 a night in fuel, it's time to stop idling and start saving. For $50 off, email sales@zerobreeze.com or text them at 945-247-1298. And don't forget to ask them about their extended warranty option. Check them out today at zerobreeze.com.
Talk about that for just a minute, because that's important, because Justin and I were in that in 2011, 2012 on the other side of it. I ran a brokerage, ran trucks, and all we heard about is how awful this thing was. And you don't really hear about it. It's just kind of common practice now. Everybody knows, what they're supposed to do for the most part. But talk about that time a little bit as a driver. Like, you're essentially being told that Big Brother's watching over you.
Yeah. No, well, so they kind of were still watching over you a little bit. I mean, you had, so we ran seafood at that time, and seafood, the way it worked was seafood was really market driven, like a lot of other commodity based stuff. So you'd have to get to Miami, wherever you were going. Let's just use Miami. I'd leave Virginia, I'd go to Miami, I'd pick up some whatever seafood I'm picking up down there. I'd hit Savannah, come up. I'd have to get to Hunts Point, right, New York, before market, because if you're late to Hunts Point, the market's going to be flooded. Whatever you're taking to market's going to be valueless at that point, right?
Right.
Because the market's already flooded. So really, seafood was all time, and so we would run like crazy. And I mean, there were times where you'd run 40 hours, 40 plus hours with no sleep, and we got to the point where we were having to send our logs by fax to FMCSA every day for them to review it. That's kind of how when you got in the bad place of hours of service, that's where you were at. That was the point.
Yeah,
But
I remember that.
they basically had said, hey, we're gonna have to start if we're gonna nip this in the bud, we're gonna have to start going another route. They started talking about the whole ELD piece, and the whole industry was like, this is going to be terrible. Because, I mean, that's really how you made your money, right? And if you started taking hours away, you're going to take money away. So that was really the big piece. And, that's when Ty Sawyer said, hey, you keep trucking came out with this free thing. We got to learn this, man. So check this out. So I downloaded it. I played with it. And I'm like, I'm not using this crap. So
and you're not the only one, right? I mean, how many times do you hear that, Justin? I mean, every day. I'm not using this. It's not real. It's not. There's no way they can get away with doing this to us.
Yeah. I mean, that's how it was, and I'm like, I like my loose leaf. The good thing about loose leaf, I mean, some of the seafood guys, they keep 5 books. The book was too big. Yeah, I just go in a truck stop. I grab a packet of loose leaf. I fill it back up. I keep tearing them out and throwing them out the window. And, that's how it worked. I like to look at technology proficiency as just knowledge proficiency, because there were guys in enforcement. They might not be technology proficient, but they weren't really math proficient either. So as long as you could kind of just show them that the paperwork looked right, you were good to go.
You speak of ranching, it's like you were the cowboys of trucking, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's how it was. I mean, it was really, seafood was like the wild, wild west of trucking. I mean, if you worked for Shackelford Seafood or Amory's or any of that group at that time, I mean, 95 was just literally a sleepless nightmare. I mean, it was. I mean, the only way I knew when it was time to sleep was I could actually feel myself. My eyes would be closed, my mind was gone. I was really asleep. And the only way I knew that I was asleep was that I could feel the drift of the truck kind of S-ing across the line.
Oh shit.
And I was like, oh no, I'm really asleep now. So now it's time to pull over. And that's how I knew, like, it's time, And then the ELDs came, and then it was a strict, depending on if you did property or pasture, because I've done a little bit of both at this point. But you had the 14 and then the 10 hours off, and it was like, well, that's dumb. And there was a time, I don't know if y'all remember this, where they actually put that piece in there where you had to take your break. A portion of your break had to be between like 12 and 2 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was so restrictive that they killed that pretty quick. So, yeah, it was train wreck, man.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I actually had an electrician at my house yesterday, and his uncle was a truck driver back in the 80s and everything. And how he said he drove it almost to a T. What you said, he said he would ride with him as as a kid, and he said I would drive. My uncle would drive until he got so sleepy that he knew it was time to pull over. And he said a nap might be 30 minutes, it might be 3 hours, it might be six. Once he woke up, if he felt good, he drove. He might drive only 4 more hours. He'd pull off, take a 30-minute nap, and keep right on going. And it's crazy. My father did the same thing. I remember doing that as a kid in a dually. But I want to ask you, based on that, with how things are with the ELD now and the how traffic is there not a happy medium we can come to? Because no driver likes the rules they are now, because it is difficult. If you get delayed a little bit, nobody knows how to do a sleeper berth. I mean, it's crazy with how it is. Is there a happy medium in there somewhere?
I kind of look at it like the flat tax. The people come in, they run for office, and they're like, everybody should pay the same percentage of tax. I kind of look at it like that. Not everybody's going to be the same, right? I've always worked on 4 or 5 hours of sleep, 120 hours a week. I mean, I'm pretty much wide open, and I don't sleep much, but that's how I've always been. Like when I was growing up, like you got up at this time and you went to bed at this time and you ate at these times, and I just got structured like that. So when you start throwing these 10 and 14 and 11-hour clocks at me, I don't need that kind of rest. Like 10 hours, I might not sleep that the whole week. So I just look at it. It's I don't know where you could get with a happy medium with it, because you can't just let people do the way we were doing it now. I like to say, everybody's like, well, what makes you different than any of the drivers that drives now? And I like to think that we were, as wild as we were, we did have at least some level of responsibility to other people on the road. Like when we finally felt we were tired, we pull over. And I know that sounds crazy based on the stories I just told, but I did consider other people. I wasn't out there saying, you know what? I don't care about whether I'm drunk or high or anything else. Like I considered other people, right? And I have to think, like in the compliance piece that I sit in now, in the risk that I watch, in the risk position, and I can watch these carriers that I work with. These are very different personas of people. Like this is not your Granddaddy Jack, in Dickies pants, and it's just a very different world, and people have become very inconsiderate of other people. It's not just a compliance factor anymore. It's more of a lack of courtesy. Nobody cares about anybody else, and it's very different. So it's hard to say that you could implement some kind of happy medium, because now I think, I kind of want the regulation now based on what we're sharing the road with. And the new persona of driver and what the industry's become. I kind of want the regulation now. I mean, I think what drives me crazy about the hours of service regulations, a lot of people talk about the hours and what we just talked about, but the big part of it is 30% of them are exempt. So everybody's got to have ALD. 30% of them is that 30% is a lot. So 30% being exempt, whether it's for agricultural exemption or short haul exemption or whatever, or drive away exemption, tow away exemption. I mean, you got a huge portion of the industry that's not really subject to any kind of hours of service tracking whatsoever. So I think your whole thing is skewed, because even if you throw results out there and statistics and data out there that say, well, fatigue is this or crashes or that, that's fine and good. But at the end of the day, you're missing probably 30 to 40% of the population, because they're not subject to hours of service. Well, they're not subject to ELDs. So I think that makes a difference with it.
Yeah. You talk about being considerate of others. I'll never forget a guy who I used to work with. He was a former driver, and he was driving out west, and and he's a young driver, rookie driver, and he's on his radio, and he has this guy come on and says, "Covered wagon, don't move." And he just blows right by him. But he was considerate, and he was like, I knew not to move. He's like, he watched out for me, and he's like, don't move. And he just, I mean, just like lightning past him. But that is, and I say it jokingly, but it is like the consideration that existed amongst those cowboys. You guys were watching out for one another, no matter what. You were aware, and I feel like people on the road now aren't aware, and even just normal car driver don't give truckers consideration and let them get to the position they need to on the road, and just get out of their way. I mean, like, why are you trying to cut this driver off who can't stop anywhere near as fast as you can? He's going to run right into your ass, and you're going to be squished.
Well, I mean, situational awareness is where it's at. I mean, I I don't. You can talk to my wife or my daughter or anybody, and they'll tell you. I can tell you everything that's happened around me to a T. I can tell you the license plate numbers of the cars that are around me. I can tell you the colors and the makes and the models and what year it was and what that car was that just passed. And like I generally know what's going on around me. And maybe that's from just, having the life that I've had to just be on the lookout all the time and waiting for the next shoe to drop. I don't know. Maybe that's it. But I found that a lot of times, and just forget the road. Go in a Costco on a Saturday and try to get around the store. I mean, they'll walk right into you like you don't even exist. And so it's not just the situational awareness on the highway. It's situational awareness everywhere you go. I mean,
Yeah.
they just don't consider that you even exist. It's really a wild time to be alive.
It really is. So I want to get into this book a little bit. I mean, it's number one, it's massive. It's 760 pages. It's well written. You've gotten into this, the Hitchhiker's Guide to Trucking, how we built, broke, and can still save American trucking. What made you sit down and write this thing? 45 years of lived experience, 12 years of investigation. That's not a small project to take on. What was the moment you knew you had to put everything you've experienced down on paper?
Well, I mean, I've kind of always thought about writing this kind of book, and I actually had written two different books. One was the FBI book on the Highway Serial Killer Initiative, and then there was this book. And then I just got so tired of kind of going back to them over 2 or 3 years that I was like, you know what, forget it. I'm gonna finish them both by putting them both together, and that's how I got to be so big. But I told Dooner on What the Truck maybe in 23 or 22. I said I'm gonna release this book this year, and then I mean here we are 3 years later, and then I was finally like, you know what, I'm done. I'm gonna finish this last part, and I'm putting it out. But there's a lot of the reason behind it. I think there's a lot of people that don't really understand the history of like where we are and how we got here.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, like a good example right now, we're talking about Modus and how bad Modus rollout is with FMCSA. It's great. I mean, I understand the conversation. I get it. I totally realize where everybody is in their mindset and how bad it is and all that. But has anybody thought to go back the past 20 years to when that initially started and how jacked up the whole rollout has been? And then I think if you take into that perspective and say, hey, you know what? We've had two parts of this system actually working for years, and everybody keeps passing the buck, passing the buck. We've had 13 administrators in 7 years, passing the buck, passing the buck, passing the buck. And now you finally got an administration, and I'm not going to say they're always right, but that they're willing to grab this thing by the horns and say, we're not passing it anymore. No matter how bad this rollout's going to be, we got to get this done, and let's do it. And I can appreciate that, because otherwise we'll be in 2034 with another president, 6 administrators from now, still passing the buck, dealing with trash systems and trash people getting into the market. And so I think understanding the perspective of where you've been, how we got here, and then where we're going from here, I don't think you can fix it if you don't understand that.
So your book, I want to ask you, what is one section, chapter, paragraph that when you wrote it or you went back and reread it to proof it, really stood out to you that you think the audience would really enjoy to read or know about?
I think so few people realize so few people understand how ICC worked. And I think if you could just get somebody back into that mindset of what trucking was like when my grandfather was running it, whether it was on the Gissels running, Gissel packing with meat trucks, or whether it was the Emersons running the farm trucks, the ICC was very different. You had 17,000 carriers that all knew each other. And if you wanted to get into that market, those 17,000 basically had to agree to let you into that market. It might have been a very regulated, restricted market, but everybody knew who was in it. Everybody knew who was going to be in it. And there was not a whole lot of riffraff. It kind of reminded me of an Indian reservation. So I do a lot of family history crap, and you may tell it from the book, but I had found out some long time ago. We're colonial Virginians, so my family's been here since the 1600s. We had some English folk that came here and married some Native American people. As white as I am, there's some Native in there somewhere. So I tried to join an Indian tribe down the street, which is the one that my family comes from. They said, well, that's fine. That's good. You've got DNA, you got all that, but we want you to come here and associate with us and socialize with the tribe. Because one of the things we're not going to do if we let you in, we're not going to change what we are and what we're doing or how we do it. So if you come here want to think that you're a boy when you're a girl and any of that craziness, just get it out of your system, right? Because we are who we are. And if you can't accept that, it's best you just not come here. And that was one of the best things where I could say, you know what, that reminds me so much of what trucking was like when it was Grenade Jack and the ICC, right? Everybody knew who was who, and everybody knew who was going to be allowed in it. And if you didn't fit that, then you weren't coming in it. And I'm not saying that we should be total segregationists, but I am saying that you should have a more responsible front door to at least say, we're not going to take it from 17,000 to 750,000 in a matter of 10 years, right? Like that's insane.
Spot rates are up 50% probably year over year. The market is actually doing pretty well right now. Flatbed line haul just hit an all-time new record. When the market gets like this and drivers are like, these carriers are out there and they're pushing their trucks, they're pushing them to run, and margins are already thin. What happens when they start to cut corners, when they start to do things to keep their trucks on the road and moving? How dangerous is that to a carrier?
Well, I mean, it depends on how you look at it. I'd say it's dangerous from a bunch of different aspects. Well, where it's going to hit on the most is going to be, I would say, insurance. Enforcement is going to hit you, but enforcement's going to be what's going to fix you. It's what's going to hit your insurance side, especially when you go for renewal and somebody's got to put a marketing package together to sell you to underwriters. They're going to see all that history that enforcement's kind of caught you wrapped up in the past 12 months. But I think just understanding that enforcement is very limited. They can't come and audit you every 12 months. They don't have the capacity for that. So where it's really going to hit you on a more consistent basis is definitely the insurance side, premiums, et cetera. So that I think is what's going to hit the most. But if you have basically any kind of catastrophic event, catastrophic crash, that's going to be the next part that's going to hit you. I mean, if you're a mid-market, carrier or small carrier, owner, operator, you have that critical catastrophic event where you kill somebody, and it's probably going to put you out of business. So you can go all the way to the extreme of the fatal crash and the catastrophe, or you can start as light as, can I get renewed this year for less than $30,000 a truck? So I think that's really the two places that's going to hit you the most: litigation and insurance.
Yeah, I think a lot of new owners don't really understand that side of things. You talked about how new fleet owners constantly underestimate capital requirements, the real business side of running their trucking company. What's the conversation you have with a guy who just got his authority, bought his first couple of trucks, and he thinks oh, I'm going to print all this money?
That's the craziest part about trucking. I think I don't know. I probably helped 20, 25 guys get started in trucking, especially in Virginia, that were used to be leased on owner operators or whatever, or what they call independent contractors. They didn't really have a truck. They just drove, and then they went and got a truck and leased on. but I think they saw like, oh, 4 to 6 thousand a week. If I have that kind
Hmm.
of cash
Yep.
flow, that I'm going to make this happen.
Yeah, and you know that that's happening right now, right? Because
Yeah.
there are
Oh yeah.
guys that are talking to other guys like, "Man, I'm coming home with these massive checks now. It happened during COVID. They all flooded in,
Yeah.
and then what they don't realize is as that flood continues to happen, it gets more and more and more, then the market starts to reverse and go
Yeah.
the other way."
Yeah. And that's the problem. But I don't know if it hit me worse as an initial driver, underestimating the capital requirements that I would have to keep the truck maintained, the insurance, me paid, everybody else paid, or if it hit me worse as a broker. Like I think in my mind, I mean, maybe it's nearsightedness, and you just see that cash flow, like, oh, broker's making 200,000 a year or whatever, and then you actually get in that broker seat, and you're like, oh, the truck's got to be paid today. Uh, so you need this massive line of credit, especially if you're going to be brokering a lot of truckload or whatever.
Yeah, I used to tell my drivers that I had 65 trucks, and I used to tell them like they'd get mad about these brokers, and I'm like, you don't realize that they're actually paying you. Like you're getting paid on that load the next week. Most of these guys, I mean, they're either taking a percentage cut if they factor, but most of them, especially the larger ones who you're complaining the most about,
Yeah.
they're not getting paid for 30, 60, 90 days.
Yeah. So for me at first it was kind of crazy, and then I kind of got my feet, underneath me. But where it really started to get bad, and factors could be a whole nother conversation. I think they're definitely I wouldn't have survived without a factor initially. But I think one of the things, as factors became more multi-billion dollar industry, one of the things that I noticed is shippers started to pay later and later. So when Anheuser-Busch, who was a customer of mine when the Bush family, Stephen and Augie Bush, had it here in Virginia, they pay every 30 days. I mean, they reconcile books every 30 days. Didn't matter what you hauled, you got paid. InBev bought them and immediately went to 180-day terms. So when
Yeah.
you're pulling barley and all this other crap from the port for these guys, and you're running, let's just say, $500,000 a month in debt. By the time 6 months rolls around, you're $3 million in the hole before you ever got your first check from InBev, which is
Mhm.
insane to me. And the only way around that is if you're going to factor it. And you
Right.
then have to find a factor that's going to say, you know what, we'll give you 3 million on a fresh company, and take on the invoicing for this. But factoring is a whole nother game, and payment terms is something else. But capital is probably the most, to me, has always been the most underrealized misrepresentation or bad mindset of going into trucking or brokering for that matter.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. So I want to bring up the dirty 5 letter word in trucking fraud. We hear about it all the time. It's on every television, TikTok, and LinkedIn post you see. I'm curious with your experience from being a driver to a broker, and of course when you started, no one thought about fraud. I mean, there might have been a little under the table kind of stuff going on every once in a blue moon, but I mean now we got chameleon carriers, double broken, cargo theft, identity theft. I mean, VIN swapping. I mean, it just on and on. Trojan, the new Trojan deal now that they have. How has it got to this point this bad? I mean, I have a good idea why, but what is the major reason we've gotten so far away from where we ought to be?
Well, I mean, anybody can get a trucking company, right? Anybody can
Yep.
start a brokerage. So the good thing about trucking companies is you still do need some money to get insurance and a few things on the front end. It's not like you can just come right off your shopping cart living on the corner and start a trucking company. There is a little bit of a financial barrier there. Not much. But on the broker side, it's even easier, right? And so you're letting in people from, like, I've got an expert witness case right now that is a quadruple Moldovan brokered load that ended up with a Russian CDL holding driver in the United States with flashlights as their tail lights, who broke down in the center lane. Didn't break down. He broke down, but he ran out of fuel. But instead of veering off the highway at night, right, knowing,
Yeah.
hey, I'm going 60, I'm running out, I should veer over, stops in the middle of a 3-lane highway. A father runs into the back of this truck because flashlights are so visible.
Yeah.
He
Mhm.
gets killed, and Now we've got this case where it's who's responsible? Is it the manufacturer of the vehicle, which is one of the biggest in the country, who brokered it to one of the biggest auto haulers in the country, who then brokered it through three other brokers, and it ended up with some Moldovan group who gave it to a Russian CDL holder, a Russian CDL. I can give you the copy of the license right now.
Wow.
And it's when you start getting into an industry where you're passing through 5 or 6 entities, and then when it gets to litigation, it's like, well, who's responsible for this? So, in terms of cargo theft, it's really no different. The more people you have involved in any kind of transaction, the more information or the lack of informational integrity that you have. And the more that information passes around, the more odds you're going to have of it getting into somebody's hands that says, hey, you know what? I think I'd like to have that load of Tito's vodka or whatever it happens to be. So I think it's the same problem as everything else, barriers to entry and having too many people involved with a transaction. So that's one of the places that we kind of have focused our fraud efforts. We created a system, and the FMCSA uses it for their investigations. And that's one of the things that we see all the time is there's so many people involved in some of these things. And sometimes on the surface level, it doesn't look like there's that many people, right? You get into the UCC filings of these things where people have co-signed on debt, and you're like, holy cow, this isn't a one-man operation, or this isn't a one-truck operation. Maybe it's one truck with 1,100 inspections with 412 VIN numbers. It's like, all this is fraud. It's all bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how does a broker, or honestly anybody picking a carrier, tell the difference between a license and an actual safe operation? I mean, how do you defend yourself?
Well, I think it kind of goes to that question. Everybody's asking after Montgomery, like, what is a safe carrier? And I think like that's not the right question to be asking. There's different ways to look at trucking and risk and compliance. Compliance is binary. There's a floor there. It's just, hey, do these things and check the box, right? We're talking risk. Risk is being transferred to brokers and shippers, and risk is a completely different thing. You can be compliant and have a CDL and do no road test, right? Because you can use a CDL in lieu of a road test and be compliant. But when you have that catastrophic crash with that driver who never had a road test, the first thing the plaintiff's attorney is going to ask, why didn't you just spend 10 minutes and do a road test to make sure you could drive a truck? Why did you think that a CDL in lieu of was okay? Well, it's compliant.
Well, yeah, we talk about this. We talk about this a lot. And Justin and I still see we're affiliated with ReadyApp heavily, and we discuss this every day as a team about the importance of driver verification.
Yes,
and how it's not being done, and we had on Highway just the other day, and you're talking about carriers are scored right now. Their safety scores are based on drivers that aren't even on with them. And what we're doing is we're not only talking about building a baseball card within ReadyApp, we're building a baseball card to score that driver based on not just a remark that a broker made because he's pissed off that driver showed up late. Not just that, but taking into account their experience, their work history, their endorsements. It's taking into account multiple different factors. And then not only stopping there, but also judging all those scores based on the carrier's current roster. You're coming in and you're seeing that a carrier has an average score of 80 based on their entire driver roster. You're showing actual current numbers and current performance. Those CSA scores are all based on previous information those drivers are probably long gone.
Yeah.
So how do we judge a carrier? That's what we're trying to fight right now is how do we come in and how do we judge a carrier and how do we help the broker or the shipper judge a carrier based on current performance, actual driver data with their current roster?
So driver data to me has always been tough because you don't know generally you don't know who's there, and unless you're using something like Highway where you're pulling in different data elements to say, this is who we're dealing with. But one of the things I've tried to get, most of the data sets we work with are data sets within FMCSA that we just mold in a certain way to make it present in a way that tells a story. it's very different than what FMCSA's current system is. It's a storage system essentially, but they don't give out driver data, right? Like all you have essentially is a driver violation. It's unsafe driving, it's driver fitness. You don't have a way to trend those to say these drivers remain here on the books, right? So
we do at ReadyApp.
Yeah, you do. But my argument to FMCSA is you have PSP data, right?
Yeah.
Why are you not using that data and analyzing the same way we're doing it with vehicles?
And here's why, because, and this is what we've tried to grow, and I don't want to go into entirely about ReadyApp here, but it's part of the conversation. It's basically, having that verifiable information and having that driver tracked no matter what carrier he's at. Because the problem is right now is that driver gets a serious violation at one specific carrier, no matter what it is, and he leaves to go to another carrier. It has minimal impact on him. That carrier is screwed. And then that broker only has that information to look at. And the whole system is just jacked. It's not suitable. You're not helping. A carrier who may be performing well is hurt by some bad actors, and there really needs to be we need to change it. We got to change how this has been going on.
Yeah, and I think Clearinghouse did try to take a step there, which Clearinghouse is full of its own set of problems. But tying the bad actors to a system to where you can at least say, well, one, they're not there, or where are they, and are they still eligible? I think that kind of went one direction. But I think if you could turn that into, like you're saying, in a way that you could kind of facilitate all the bad actors, it's kind of like it's like the old DAC, but like everybody's scared of DAC in the old days because there were lawsuits that made it subjective. But if you could find a way to make it an objective criteria like you're talking about, which sounds like you have, that's ideal, because then you know where the drivers are at any given time. I tried to do something like this with 10th Street at one time, because 10th Street has a huge driver database. They do 4 million records, and I even offered to see if you were to anonymize this data and actually put it to where we can say, all right, whoever 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is, that guy's driving for like 6 companies. He never sleeps, and he gets more violations than anybody. Like, tracking the driver is huge. And if you get, like you said,
it needs to be, and the driver needs to own that data. The driver needs to own that data, and it needs to follow them, just like their CDL or their MVR or their background check, but to follow them where they've got it in their passport, what we call it, kind of like a wallet. And it goes from carrier to carrier to carrier. No matter who they're with, it follows them and it keeps track of their scores. And then their score has an impact on the overall score of that carrier. So you can truly judge how that carrier is hiring and if they're making,
good decisions.
Good decisions. Yeah, correct.
Yeah, because I think some of that's going to go to management. Whether you're looking at an SMS basic for maintenance or unsafe driving or driver fitness, sometimes it's going to go to not just the driver you're hiring, it's going to go to how are you managing the hiring process. Because if you're managing it the right way, you're going to catch this at the front end. It's still a barrier to entry problem, whether it's a barrier to the industry or a barrier to your company. But the driver is going to be a huge part, and we don't track or expose anywhere near enough data to clean up the driver's side at this point.
John's wife is a real estate agent. Any real estate agent has to be retested every couple of years. They have to go back, make sure they know all the new laws, which makes sense, right? Things change. They need to know that so you don't do something wrong. Why don't we have something like that for drivers? Laws change, regulations change. We have a lot of bad drivers that need a little extra tutelage per se for how they're driving or how they're running their logs. Why can't we have something like that's another way to monitor the drivers, that, hey, if you're in the bottom percentage, you've got to have these types of tests to continue to keep your license.
It's something that I always push for in terms of right now, really the only place we have that is hazmat. Like, I still have to go redo my hazmat every 5 years to make sure that I still remember the same freaking test that I took 5 years ago. And I still got to renew my TWIC card to make sure that I'm still not a killer or a rapist or anything crazy. but no one else has to do that. And so I agree on that point. And one of the things that I've always said we need to have is a freaking open deck endorsement for load securement. That's something we've never
True.
had, which never made any sense to me. You got to have a passenger endorsement, and you have to have ELDT to get a passenger endorsement, which is crazy. To tell you, hey, sir, don't cross the yellow line up here and get too close to the front of the bus. You might trip and break your nose. You got to have that endorsement, but you don't have to have an endorsement to understand brake strength of your equipment or working load limit or how to do the math to figure out these things or how many points of securement you got to have. And, last year, Q1, we had 5 expert cases that were all fatalities, and every single one of them was load securement related. Plates coming off trucks and going through people's faces, through windshields, just total final destination stuff, all load secure.
Your book says, before we close out here, your book says how we built, broke, and can still save American trucking. I want to talk about saving American trucking. Something you talk about a lot that hit home for me, and I believe in, and I've got mentors that mentor me every day, and and I mentor some people but mentorship is huge. A huge thing you talk about. You're a big advocate for it at every stage of of the logistics career. You had serious mentors who poured into you, I'm sure. For the young driver, the new safety person, or the kid just getting into the industry, what do you say to them?
Um, I think the biggest thing is just awareness and learning to operate thinking for other people. A lot of people get into this industry and they think, well, as long as I'm safe, as long as I do XYZ, and it's not always about that. I mean, I have a really good situational awareness no matter where I'm. I don't care where I am, whether I'm pumping gas or whether I'm in a store. You're not going to just creep up on me. And I think that's the problem with a lot of people in the industry. We've gotten to a point where, you know, I'll put a video out there and they'll say, well, that's not the truck driver's fault. That guy was crossing the street at a non-crosswalk. It's like, you can't just run the guy over because he's walking across the road. I mean, you still have to have some courtesy and some situational awareness, and you have to start thinking for other people because in the society that we live in now, nobody else is thinking of, you got to start thinking for everybody else. And I think that's probably the biggest piece is situational awareness, thinking for others. And, trucking is not a surprise. Generally, if you've driven a truck for any amount of time, you know that there's certain things that are givens that if you get to a junction where you got a lot of road signage and informational signage, I can almost guarantee you that you're going to have somebody make a right hand 90-degree turn or a left hand, or they might even back up on the interstate to go back and get their exit that they just missed. It's things like that that you can say, hey, this is a junction. I'm going to slow down, get in the right lane. I'm going to back off, and I'm just going to wait for the stupidity to happen. I'm going to be ready for it when it does. But there's so many people that just they react when it happens because they're not thinking far enough ahead. They're not thinking for everybody else that's on the road with them. They don't think about those things that are common, like side swipes.
You've done it all in trucking. You've been around a long time, which in its own right is an accomplishment. What is your biggest accomplishment? What are you most proud of so far, what you've accomplished in the trucking industry?
Man, I don't know that if it's a personal thing, then from a professional side, I work with the FMCSA every day. I built a system, not being a tech guy. They use it every day to solve these cases. I think we've closed about 50 cases with them that they were about. Derek Bars was telling me when they first bought my system, the first thing he says, we were like 80% there with this case. All we needed was that last 20%, and your system's data got us that last 20%. And you're talking about 50 cases, I think, at this point.
Go into your systems data real quick, just for our listeners who don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so it's similar to a vetting platform, but really more than a vetting platform, it was built to assess risk and to investigate risk. So, probably my favorite tool and probably FMCSA's favorite tool is you can bulk drop, say, 2,000 plates and 2,000 VINs, and it'll scan 25 million records over time and say, all right, that one VIN has had 7 plates tied to it across all these states, and it's ran under the following 12 carriers. between these dates and these dates, and it'll show you all of that. So a lot of times when you're looking at like these chameleon carriers, you can just take their SMS data, drag and drop all their records for VINs and plates, throw it in there, and you'll see all the plates and all the VINs that have run under all these other companies. So you get an immediate list of, wait a minute, Super Ego is, it might be a leasing company, but it's tied to this one, this one, this one, this one. And we're not claiming it. This is data that's showing it.
Right.
So I think, there's 300 tools in there that do it with 35 APIs that pull all kinds of different data. So more than a vetting tool, it's an investigation tool, and that's what they're using it for. So I'd say to get to a point from being a farm kid with dirt floors and having crackhead parents to where the federal government and the FBI and the OIG's office is using your system to solve federal crimes, it's pretty
awesome.
Wild.
That is awesome.
But at the root of it, I always look at myself like I'm just a farm kid, right? And so I think from a personal side, just to get to a place where, I'm 45 years old and I'm the oldest person in my family still alive. My brother was 28 when he died of an overdose. My sister was 38. She died of an overdose. Both my parents, had the drug issues. My dad died at 43. And so to be the oldest alive at 45 is pretty wild. So I got emancipated when I was 15 years old. I went out on my own. I made it happen. And I think to get where I am now at 45, it's like you've accomplished a lot that most people hadn't. And I don't think I've ever even said that before because it just goes to the humble nature of it. But it's like, a lot of people are like, why don't you sell the book more? Why don't you do this more? I'm like, I put it out there. If they want to buy it, they'll buy it, So it's just one of them things, I'm just what's the saying? I'm just glad to be here. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of where it is.
Yeah. Well, it's incredible. It's a tremendous book, and what you've accomplished. I mean, the DOT guy, Truck Safe Consulting, Freight Waves. You've been on multiple channels talking about this. This was a good one, Rob. We really appreciate you coming on, and we hope to have you on again.
Yeah, anytime.
Today's episode is sponsored by Gray Cross. Every day, professional drivers make sacrifices that most people never see. Long hours, missed holidays, time away from family, and the responsibility of keeping America's supply chain moving. Gray Cross was created to support those drivers and their families when life takes an unexpected turn. By providing assistance, resources, and support during the difficult times, Gray Cross helps strengthen the trucking community one family at a time. Because behind every truck is a driver. Behind every driver is a family counting on them. If you'd like to support the mission, visit graycross.org to learn more. Donations are always appreciated, but simply sharing their message with others in the industry can make a tremendous difference. Gray Cross, supporting the people who keep America moving. Today's episode is brought to you by ReadyApp. Trust is the one most valuable asset in transportation. That's why ReadyApp created Driver Verify. Driver Verify helps carriers, brokers, and transportation companies gain greater confidence through verified driver identities, professional credentials, work history, and onboarding visibility. Drivers can securely maintain CDL information, endorsements, certifications, and employment records all in one professional profile. As fraud continues to impact the transportation industry, verification has never been more important. ReadyApp, verified drivers, trusted freight. Go check them out at ready-app.com.